student reporters tonight, right?
No, we don't have student reporters.
You're good to go.
All right, welcome everybody to the December 9th, 2020 board meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Lucy, have your flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to
The republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Raise your hand. Any abstentions? All right, the next item is public comment. Do you have any public comment, Ken?
Yes. Phone number ends in 0738. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Danya Viola, Durham. I'd just like to say that when I seen the agenda this evening, I'm curious to find out what the special meeting is for, scheduled for December 16th. And one other question I have is relevant to item 8B, as in boy, with the Human Resources Committee written there. Are you still moving in the direction of a new hire as to a position for human resources? I think that was brought up several months back. And if so, I'd like to know a little better the reasoning behind it.
Thank you, Danya.
You're welcome.
And we'll go over those issues when we get there. Any other comments?
No, that's all.
Right. The next board meeting, next item is the approval of the minutes from the board regular session meeting on November 11th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So move.
A second?
Second.
Any comments, corrections? Victor? No? All right. All in favor? Adopting the minutes?
I'll abstain.
Christine abstains. The next board meeting is a special meeting of 7 o'clock next Wednesday, December 16th. The primary purpose of the meeting will be recognition of Kathy's service for the last 7 years. We've invited a number of old board members or previous board members, they are not all old, to come in and wish her well, and some other folks to come and talk. We will probably have a few items at the end of the meeting to deal with, but the primary purpose of the meeting will be to thank her for her service for all those years. All right. The next item is COVID-19 response update. Kath?
Thank you, Bob. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Just first of all, in giving the update on any of our responses to COVID, I have to acknowledge the effort on behalf of every single person in this district. Each person has their own responsibility depending on what job they have. But in terms of the success that we have had in not spreading the virus in the school and keeping our numbers down is really due to the fact that people have adhered to our mitigation strategies, most especially the wearing of masks. At the last board meeting that I presented to you, we had 23 cases, and that was on the 11th of November. And some of those cases, as I mentioned to you at that time, and I'll bring up my chart as soon as I make a few more comments, were students who are remote students and not in school. And since that time, since November 11th, we have had 17 more cases. And that was, right after the Thanksgiving break. And of those 17 cases, we have had 3 that have resulted in quarantining of more people than just the positive case itself. And we were able to have a quiet Thanksgiving. And so Thursday, Friday, and Saturday were quiet for us. Sunday afternoon, we learned about 3 cases, and 2 of those cases are the ones that resulted in our decision to move to a fully remote model in the high school due to the numbers of students and staff that were quarantined. So I'm just going to share my screen for a moment so I can go over that chart with you just briefly. So I had to turn the lights back on. Okay, district. All right, let me get rid of us over here. All right, so if you see where we were, right over here, 11:10 was right before our board meeting, and then 11:16, we had a case at Strong. After that, you'll see that we had cases at Strong, and this is a very, very basic overview list that I keep. Pam Brancifor, our COVID liaison, and our clinical nurse coordinator has very comprehensive documentation. And this is just kind of for me to have an overview as well as to be able to share with the board. And you'll see that the 3 cases that we were notified of on the 29th, Sunday, the 29th of November, resulted in 3 staff members at Strong having to be quarantined and 30 students, and at the high school, 18 teachers and 103 students. And due to the challenges around scheduling, if we had any more staff members out, as I noted in my letter, we decided to go remote and felt that that was the best instructional decision for students. And since that time, up until the 7th, which was Monday, we have been notified of more cases, and but none of those cases have required quarantining beside the case. I do want to just bring you up to date as well with the changes in our student, the weekly cohort of our students, which is cohort C, the students who have chosen to work fully remotely. Oh, geez, here we go. Okay, and I'll just scroll across so that we get to the more current numbers. And our week that ended the 20th of November, we had a total of 238 students who had chosen to participate in cohort C and be fully remote students, and last week, Friday, we had a total of 249 students. So we saw an increase of 11 students. What we have seen, a couple of themes have arisen for us. For some of our high school students, once they've been out for a while, possibly because they've quarantined, some have chosen to remain learning remotely. And we're also seeing over the course of the past week, some parents who have some concerns just in terms of looking at the numbers of cases in our communities and across the state. And some who have also chosen to have their students learn remotely in preparation for the holidays and having family members who plan to visit. Other than that, in terms of our COVID information this week, and if you're following the news, you're seeing that we have some hopeful news on the vaccine. So we're anxiously awaiting to see what that will mean for our state, for the community, and obviously for our schools. Additionally, there was new information from the CDC on possible modifications to quarantining. Generally speaking, moving from a 14-day quarantine to a 10-day and to a 7-day with a positive test result. As with even our 14-day quarantining, there can be some modifications that are case specific. We met with the State Department of Education as well as the Department of Public Health on Tuesday and anticipated a recommendation from DPH to the State Department of Education and to the state of Connecticut in terms of their recommendations on the quarantining, the change in the quarantine guidelines. So we had anticipated that on Tuesday afternoon, have not yet received it. It's our understanding that that's been shared with the governor. So we'll wait and see what happens there for us. And other than that, in terms of our update on our COVID response, I need to mention that the impact on everybody, staff, students, parents alike, is I think people are feeling the pressure of enduring with COVID and managing their lives around it. And with the holidays coming and cold and dark and an increase in the virus, I will say we're feeling the heaviness of that in school. And but true to District 13, what I'm finding is that people are taking the opportunity to reach out to each other, to support each other, to ask for help when they need it, as well as to take a moment to look at some of the things that are silver linings in a kind of a challenging period of time. So that's what I have for an update there, and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Are you still requiring people give a 2-week notice in order to switch to cohort C?
You know, Missy, it's kind of case specific. What happened is that we have some cohort C groups that are rather large, and it would be very difficult to accommodate another student in cohort C. So in some cases, we would simply have to have the child remoting in with the classroom teacher. So it's kind of, I don't want to say case specific, but grade specific.
And I just want to thank you everyone for all their hard work. And I truly appreciate you keeping us in school as long as we can, because I really do feel like a lot of districts not that they didn't try, but like, you know what I mean? And I mean, I think it's just these kids, they need it, and it gives them something to look forward to. And I do know that it's getting colder and they're not necessarily eating outside as much anymore, but even when they're getting outside for recess and being able to be with their friends, I think it's really making a big difference. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. It's a team effort, and it really helps to have the support. And I cannot tell you how much the support of this community has meant, and it has had a huge impact on our ability to stay open, because there are communities that have put an extraordinary amount of pressure on the school based on the early metrics that were shared, encouraging schools to go remote should the case rate in the community go up. We are seeing kids who are happy and engaged with their peers and learning. And Bob will probably give you a little bit of an update from our well-being committee last night, where some of our high school reporters talked about, the challenge of being disconnected even during a 7-day remote learning period. So thank you for your support and acknowledgement of that, Missy.
Any other questions for Kath? Being on the other end of the phone call when she tells me we're closing, this is constant activity. I think almost every day there's issues related to this that have come up, and Kath has worked through all of them superbly. So, and I'm glad that we can be able to keep the schools open as much as we can. So, the next item on the agenda is the strategic coherence plan update.
Sure, Bob. This is, something that I imagine will continue for the rest of the school year. And I think part of our theory of action in how we will achieve our goals is that we have a monitoring process, that we identify our strategic outcomes and the associated improvement strategies, and the fact that we come to the board, we look at them as an administrative team, helps us to move towards them. I will say that this year, and there's probably a more professional way to portray what this year has felt like for us, but it's kind of been a little bit like whack-a-mole. When things pop up, we try to hit them as quickly and effectively as possible. And so the strategic coherence plan reminds us that we're not just in a reaction framework, which we largely have been in addressing and responding to the virus, and diving back into our strategic coherence plan reminds us that, this is part of a larger improvement effort. So I'll just again quickly share with you. I had given you an overview of where we were with just the development of our strategic coherence plan. And let's see, here we go. When we talked about this briefly in November, we did a little bit of a color coding with leading and lagging indicators, leading indicators being in green and lagging in red. And so in the area of student achievement, just quickly really looking at, after we administer our second round of assessments, to have a point of comparison of where our students are, what kind of growth they've made, and what the impact has been on them, either by being involved in remote learning or in-person learning in our district, and to look at the mechanism by which we can refine our growth and performance indicators. We also talked about our students and just some of the changes that we've seen after they have, they were learning remotely in the spring, and that we were seeing kind of a decrease in their academic stamina, and that may have been, due to several areas, but possibly even their interest in what it was that they were learning. So we felt that we needed to gather some data on that, really take a careful look at our students and their level of engagement and their academic stamina, especially as they reach challenges. we're continuing to look really at our authentic learning and make sure that all of our curricular units have performance tasks. I'd like to continue the instructional rounds process. If Dr. Shook is interested in that, I think that it would be an area that the board would be very interested in if we're able to even do that remotely in the spring. Our SRBI work continues in terms of making research-based interventions for our students who need that. Corey is working with the high school in terms of looking at a blended learning academy. We've been in touch with the folks from the Merwin Foundation to see whether or not they would support some grant opportunities for us to explore a blended learning academy, which we can discuss further at the next Student Achievement Committee. We also will continue our Portrait of the Citizen work as we move into next year. That was kind of stalled on February 21st of last year. Well-being is an area that I'm proud to say that this district has taken very seriously, and it's an area across the district that people have a great deal of interest in, and right now a great deal of concern, particularly for our staff. And so we want to make sure that the way we're addressing it is based on what's actually happening. So we'll be holding some focus groups with staff and students, re-administering our climate survey and developing our action steps from there. We'll continue to have our partnership with CCSU, always working on our health initiatives and mitigation strategies as we move through the remainder of this year and likely into next. We're continuing to keep our equity and race work in the area of well-being. The Policy and Well-being Committee have begun to create a policy on race and equity and created a first draft of that and reviewed that at the Policy Committee meeting as well as the Well-being Committee. And finally, in the area of engagement, continuing our Portrait of the Citizen process, expanding our MTA marketing and programming. And hopefully, I know that our utilization committee is looking to continue to work on our the district-wide grade reconfiguration and our plans for our buildings. We've begun the budget process internally, and we will I will pass the baton to Dr. Shook. We'll be doing some work, and in my superintendent's update, I'll review the priorities and parameters, but moving forward to present a responsible budget this year. And re-engage after last year when our communities were not able to vote on the budget. I think it's an important time to kind of redesign a budget engagement process. And then I think it's also time for us to just redesign our communication framework. And that's where we are in our strategic planning.
Any questions, comments? So I need to have a conversation with Dr. Shook on making sure how we get him engaged in the whole process as well. Any comment? If not, the next item on the agenda are committee reports. The first is the policy committee. Norm?
Yeah, well, I finally made it here having to re-download the entire Zoom software. So my apologies for being a little late. Really, the only item on the agenda is the first read of the policy regarding retention of electronic records and information. If you have looked at it, it's rather lengthy and it's an interesting read, but it's something that we need to do. There's a whole litany of statutory actions that accompany that. So we'll have a conversation about that probably in, I suspect, January. That's it.
Hey, any comments on that policy? If not, next.
Actually, I have a
is
question.
Human Resources. Okay, go ahead. Go
Um,
ahead.
which would be to Kath. You must have looked at the policy. I'm wondering whether the many items that are mentioned will occasion any changes in our current procedures for IT and information handling.
Victor, were you in that? I can't remember if you attended the policy committee.
No, I did not.
Okay, Ken was there. So he, Ken has had a careful look at the policies and was part of the discussion there.
So do we have Ken's approval?
Yes. It also requires us to delete, to get a lot of record retention and decide which documents should be kept and which should be discarded. Ken, you want to say anything?
Sure. Yeah. The camera doesn't want to work. Okay. Basically, the policy just declares that the email server is not a proper records retention device or storage device. We still have to adhere to, proper saving of records, whether it be printing it out or saving it to PDF. Basically just saves us from an IT perspective on storage and not having to pay for storage, which seems like it's coming with Google, or if we were in-house with an Exchange server, having to keep buying server upon server to store every email forever.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, the next report is to Human Resources. Lucy?
Okay, the meeting was probably about an hour, but a lot was discussed. So I'm going to just go through what I have in my notes. As far as student enrollment and numbers of teachers, it's pretty much about the same. There haven't been any changes. There have been some repurposing of staff in Memorial, Brewster, and Lyman School, but as far as numbers, we're just about the same. In terms of like repurposing, for instance, Brenda, who is our STEAM coordinator, her role has been changed to instructional technology coordinator, because they're going through with so much emphasis on technology with the online learning and all, the teachers need assistance because they're using more technology. So that's, I believe, if I got it correctly, I believe that's what Brenda's role will be more. So am I correct, Kathy?
She hasn't, her role has not changed. Like, we haven't changed her title, but what we were describing was how much her responsibilities have changed this year, and that are more in line with, like a technology, instructional technology person. I'm just actually what I think what we have been talking about is that in the budget, our budget or the budget proposal, you'll see a proposal for a change in title to technology specialist based on the changes in her responsibilities, but we haven't made any changes to her title at this time.
At this time, okay. All right, maybe I'm sorry, I just missed that.
That's okay.
To clarify.
We wouldn't do that without the board being aware.
Okay, well, I was talking about the differences in terms of repurposing and moving people around. We, you use people as you need them.
Lucy, do you mind, just on that particular point, is there a reason why we were moving towards that long term? I mean, I understand the current COVID climate and the needs for technology from that, but it seems like by shifting responsibilities, we've gone back to that old model where we were having the technology specialist be as kind of this adjunct helper for teachers, whereas the STEAM coordinator was supposed to be directing students and pushing forward STEAM initiatives. So I do worry about that change in roles and what it means for our students and the initiatives for STEAM moving forward.
A good question, and I think, Andrew, that probably the most appropriate way to discuss this is not just as a one-off, because as part of the budget presentation, what we're looking at next year and in the coming years and the different responsibilities based on how things have changed are part of the budget proposals in some of the kind of restructuring of people's responsibilities. So we can address that at that time. And I can actually, I'm meeting with the administrative team. They just turned their budget in and their budget proposals on last Thursday, and we're meeting to discuss next Thursday. And so I can do kind of a little bit of a narrative for the board to look over that. And then there'll be a comprehensive discussion of all of those at the time. But thanks for bringing that up.
Along those same lines, we also discussed how the role of the director of curriculum has really expanded significantly. And so that may also be discussed in the future as well. Kathy, we talked about the blended learning for a possible academy in the high school. In the future, we looked at, we have 10 teachers at the moment who are, there's 10 staff members who are remotely teaching right now. 6 are certified teachers, 2 at the high school, 1 at Strong, 2 at Brewster, 1 is an interventionist, and there's non-certified staff. There's 1 at Brewster, 2, the TA, teacher assistants, 1 at Brewster, 2 at Strong, and 1 at the high school doing remote support. We talked about what the COVID funds will cover and what they don't cover. There was a discussion about, I believe, a virtual learning proctor, which would be someone that would monitor the students that are in school when the teacher is teaching remotely. Is that, yes, I have it correctly. Where the teacher is teaching remotely, you have someone that has to be in the classroom with the students who are there. So there's a discussion about that. I believe this is all budgetary pieces, if I'm not mistaken, Kathy, for virtual learning proctor's possibility for the 21-22 budget. At the moment, staff is being used during their prep periods in order to cover the classes, and this would be at the high school level only.
Actually, Lucy, those virtual learning proctors are something that we're doing right now.
Right.
That's happening
staff.
now.
Right.
Mhm.
Using the staff during prep periods and all, and you're shifting staff around to cover.
And that we've been able to hire a couple of people to just serve as that virtual learning proctor as well.
Okay, there's also been some discussion about coordinating the schedule between the middle school and the high school. So teachers, as the enrollment changes, they can go back and forth between the 2 buildings much easier if the schedules are coordinated. And Kathy said that whenever staff comes to her with budget issues and talks about positions, she says, let's talk about needs and then we'll see how we can fill in the spaces. So we didn't directly discuss the HR position going forward. I know Kevin's doing a phenomenal job at the moment, and I wasn't sure exactly where that was going to go.
So I think that just in the question from Mrs. Viola, this
Right.
just I think that maybe there was an assumption that the human resources was really talking about a position rather than a summary of the human resources committee meeting.
Okay.
And so
I see
the
what you mean.
HR position is continues to be a non-certified position. We had put it in the budget for this year as a non-union position at 0.5. We increased that once we knew we were going to be dealing with COVID, and we have a retired administrator, Kevin Bro, who's working in that position and is doing a phenomenal job. And truly, I have to say, I don't know what we would do without him. And I think if you can see Kim's vigorous nodding, I mean, it is the HR considerations through COVID are basically nonstop. So we are meeting continually on matters like that, and making sure that we're handling it correctly and paying attention to what the district needs are, as well as what the needs are of our staff. So my recommendation will be that it is a non-union position, and that I think for the foreseeable future, it probably should remain a 1.0. Our agreement with Kevin when he started was that it would probably be a 4-day-a-week position. We just can't seem to get it to 4 days yet. So maybe by March, we'll turn the corner on some of the demands in HR, but that's where we are right now, Lucy. Not a change there.
Did eliminate an administrator position for that.
I'm sorry, Bob, I didn't catch that.
We eliminated the administrator position that was doing some HR work.
Right.
Okay. All right, that's it. I'm done.
Thank you, Lucy. Any other questions? Next is the Wellbeing Committee. We met yesterday. The first part of the meeting we worked on was with the draft of a diversity and equity and policy. The draft has been worked on a little bit more since the meeting. We've had quite a long discussion of, the policy itself with some definition needs and a few other structural changes. But I think we will have that sent out to everybody fairly shortly. We'll probably bring it up at the next policy committee for review and bring it to the full board. It really focuses on making sure we have equitable educational experience, as Victor said, and focuses on, the need for equal access of resources and use of resources, and also a variety of requirements for both the board in terms of our hiring and procurement, and of the superintendent in terms of implementation and curriculum and issues like that. So that policy is being worked on. Joanna Schmidt agreed to spend some time on definitions and has worked on that and has added them to the policy already. So we should be getting that out shortly and have everybody start to take a look and start thinking about it. The other issues were on student well-being, and we have Nora O'Connell and Gage Ravelli. Gage and Nora really help in the discussion of what's going on with the students. There's a couple of interesting things. They are relieved about the homework on weekends and Wednesdays, except the two kids there are all UConn and AP courses and have the homework anyway. But the majority of the kids who are not in the AP or UConn courses are pleased with that decision. They like Wednesdays still for time to talk about other things. They are concerned in talking to some of their friends who are on remote only that they're missing the connection with other students and the live connection. So they've been working on trying to reach out. They've also given feedback to our teachers on what has been working. Gage found that a math teachers were getting together and working, collectively on issues, and found that very helpful. So that there's been lots of good feedback from them on what their needs are and what is important to them. They are happy to be in school. They are understand that there are changes every week, every day, and they are coping with it. I think fairly well, and they seem to really enjoy being back in school as much as they can. The teachers talk about their needs as well for well-being, and one of their specific needs is to make sure that they reach out to each other since they're not all seeing each other like the normal. They don't see, especially the ones that are remote. So they need to be able to reach out and assist each other as much as they can, and they look for ways to make sure that they have some connection with each other and with the students. The students seem to like the Google Meet so they can interact with the teacher. The teachers seem to like to be able to see their students as well. Anything else, Kath, or Norm, from that meeting? No, Norm? Anybody else have any comments on the well-being committee?
I'm sorry, I missed the button. I just was, it was nice and refreshing to hear the point of view from the teachers as well as the students, because those of us who are not in the classroom really don't know what's going on. And I took everything they said to heart, and I applaud them all, students and teachers too, because it's a whole different set of rules, and they are struggling, and I can totally sympathize with them.
I'd just like to say that it became clear to me that the tools that are available for teachers now create an environment that's really different from pure in-class teaching, pure in-person teaching. And there's probably never been a time when we did not need more sharing of ideas between teachers. It's been ironic that they're also so pressed to do so many extra things that they don't get the time. But it's, small tricks can make a big difference. And that the little bit of exchanges that we saw during this wellness meeting, I thought, were both good examples of that kind of exchange, and also a kind of a finger pointing at us that we should do everything that we can to help teachers help each other. Best practice in this environment is not known. And that's a challenge that all of our teachers are working on. And I think we have to be enormously grateful for everyone who's sticking with it and trying to find the best ways to go forward.
Even in that meeting, which again, I think is a very uniquely District 13 phenomenon to have the student representation and staff representation and talk very openly and honestly about how people are doing, and people aren't showing up and feeling like they have to say everything's great because there are board members or the superintendent there. And one of the students said, I wish there was a mechanism by which we could give the teachers feedback to thank them, to tell them what's working, and for them to tell us how we're doing and to give us some feedback. I think we could hear in these student reporters how much they want some personalized outreach. And Norm, to your point, as they were talking about that, and Gage was saying, oh, maybe we could use a shared Google Doc, and the teacher from Strong said, well, do your teachers use Padlet? Because if they use Padlet, that would be a great way. That's like just a really small example of what you're talking about and what is happening around the district, and probably not to the extent that it could, simply by virtue of the demands of simply keeping up with the teaching expectations.
Thank you, Kath. That's a really good example, because I think that's the second meeting at which Padlet has been mentioned as a mechanism for that. And I was a little bit surprised that I didn't hear anybody jump and say, well, we're all doing it now, because it's clearly is a very good idea. But it's coming down to this again. Everybody is just struggling to keep their heads above water. And we're trying to compress what's really a process of years into a few months, which is defining a new way, a new world to teach in.
I thought the well-being committee meetings are going very informative. I think there's changes that are recommended that Kath's been able.
Well, I guess there goes Bob. I mean, almost made it to an hour.
Oh,
he's back.
I'm back. It just shut off the video somehow. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
No.
I think though that we need to have a pool going forward.
I have another device ready to go. The next item was the ERS meeting. Christine, you want to talk about that?
I'm going to give the 30-second overview. There were two topics. So the one being the Bloom Shapiro audit. And I'm not going to go into detail about it because Kim said that she was going to talk about it during her Director of Finance report. But overall, it was a clean report. You couldn't ask for a better audit. So kudos to Kim and her team and the audit team, especially doing an audit during COVID, which trust me, is not easy, like trying to scan 1,000 things and upload them to a shared file. So kudos to everybody. And then the second piece was the Morgan Stanley overview, which we were like 95% done. So ERC is going to meet briefly for like 15 minutes, probably next week, just to go over some last minute questions, and they'll likely be a vote to just shift some of the allocations around, but otherwise it looked fine.
Yeah, it showed an impressive growth over the year, despite what's going on. So next item is communications, and I did have one letter from Danya Viola, which we granted. The other is Todd Petronio did a fall sports banquet, which is all remote, but each coach did a very nice presentation for all the awards and all the teams and all their work that they were able to get through this year, and both the competitions that they had. And the other issue, I think, and I think he did a really super job on getting everybody's attention and doing his best can at having a non-dinner, but it was really good presentation. The other one, I hope that you all had a chance to look at the Cognitive Valley Education Foundation recent video on the actions of our global citizens or former graduates of Coggins and what they've been doing with their life since graduation, and how much each one of them expressed how much that Coggins has meant to them in their careers. And if you haven't had a chance to look at it, go on their website and listen to it. They did a really wonderful job, and the kids did a great job. Not kids anymore. Any other communications?
I just want to put a pitch in for Pullman and Comley, which is a law firm that we use rarely, but I don't know if if the board gets the bulletins from them regarding their online web, their conversations. They did one on the 19th of November that I attended. It was 5 parts. It was about sexual harassment, which of course we in the policy committee have just finished working on a policy regarding that. FOIA in a COVID-19 world, which has certainly changed things significantly. Special education obligations in a COVID world. I've found that particularly interesting because of the work that I happen to be doing at ACES. Employee and student free speech. And the one that I thought was which has nothing to do with Region 13, but it has to do with any school that has a mascot that might be of some question, including the school system that I worked with that for quite a number of years. So school mascots and civil rights were a hot topic. So I guess what I'm saying is if you get a chance to take a look at them, they do them 2 or 3 times a year. They're really worthwhile, and you can pick and choose the things you want to hear about. And each topic only lasts about 15 minutes. So that's my pitch for this evening.
Jamie?
I neglected to convey this at the last meeting. My mother-in-law, Margaret Coe, had requested that I make it known that Roderick Story, Rod Story, a former CRHS principal, 1990-ish, had passed on October 13th. But many of you may well remember Rod Story as a principal, so that's that.
Any other communication? If not, the superintendent's report. Yeah.
Sure, Bob. A little bit anticlimactic to have my last official board meeting this evening, but I came into the library for old time's sake, just to feel like you guys were actually here. And one of the custodians just walked in and he said, "Kath, can you lock up the building?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll set the alarm, no problem." And he said, "And can you make sure nobody from the meeting walks down the hallway towards the gym?" And I was like, "Steve, I'm the meeting. They're all here." But anyway, I'm going to just lift up my computer so you can just take a look at your meeting room. And I just kind of reflected that, and I'm only going to take 2 minutes to say this because I know everybody's anxious to get into their evening, but in the course of 7 years, I have attended, I think, around 500 board meetings or board committee meetings, and certainly countless other meetings. And I can't even begin to imagine how much time that amassed for me and for all of us. And I don't really think it's the number of meetings or the hours that we spent in them, but the level of dedication and commitment to being involved in something that was bigger than ourselves and truly making this district a better place for children. And I have to say, 7 years ago, there were many times that I sat at a board table, and I will tell you, I was truly frightened. I was frightened of the disagreement and the challenge. And I want to thank you for helping me to get over that. Because in any challenge or disagreement, at the heart of it was, always respect and always striving for a better outcome. And for that, on my last official board meeting, I'm truly grateful. And so just a couple of updates for this evening. Oh, funny, the lights just went out. That we had the community, what was the community roundup was changed to the community drop off last week, Saturday, and kind of that rain and snowy weather. And what the team who always organizes that did was to try to, again, look at what's the outcome we're looking for and how can we achieve that given the constraints of COVID. So just a little bit of a tweak from a roundup to a drop off, and they were able to collect 10,863 pounds of food and $4,600 to donate. So great job to everyone there. And at our, I think many of the points that I wanted to make during the update for tonight were kind of woven through our strategic plan, our COVID update, and the general happiness that we're seeing in our kids being able to be here in school. And just finally, I'll quickly share my screen again, just to share the budget priorities and parameters. And we are never without a budget year that gives us its own unique challenges and opportunities. And I think 21-22 is going to deliver. And there will be some unique challenges, and one of them is that we will be going into the 21-22 school year with probably the lowest fund balance that I can recall, which is just under 350,000 now. Kim,
I will speak to that, but just over three.
Just over three, was it 360?
I have, sorry, you caught me off guard here.
Okay, you're going to be talking about it. I just wanted to bring that up as as we're moving into a year.
384.
Okay, still quite a bit lower, and it's the fund balance has been a budgeting strategy that the district has used for many years. And it has fluctuated from, over $3 million to this is the lowest that I've seen it. So that will be something that, we'll begin to explore next week when as an administrative team, we really dive into the initial budget proposals. And we'll be looking forward to a year where we're talking about recovery, as well as kind of, just getting back up on the horse and building some traction in the areas that we were working on. And so I'll just quickly share. And we tried to really pare down our priorities and parameters. Just kind of, these are a little bit of our guideposts. First of all, that our team is committed to the professional collaboration that's really characterized by our core ethical values. And let me see, one second. Kim, are you able to get into the document? Oop. Hold on one second. Kim, can you hear me?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm trying to to get off your screen and onto mine.
Yeah, you can just make that little edit for me. So we want to make sure that we're continuing to work collaboratively, obviously, with the Board of Education, and with the development of the Finance Committee. I think, you know, it will be really important for the Board of Ed to continue to work with the Finance Committee. I think we've made incredible strides in terms of our budget being a very transparent and collaborative process. So our commitment is to adhere to a zero-based budgeting approach, which is something that Kim and I work on with our administrators, and align our budget resources to the articulated strategic priorities. Always maintaining our class sizes within the Board of Education guidelines, maintaining sufficient funding to meet negotiated wage and benefit agreements. And I'll just use this as an opportunity to talk about the fact that we finalized our negotiations on Monday night with the support staff union. And Bob and Lucy participated in those negotiations. I want to thank both of them for their valuable input on that, and just acknowledge all our unions who, over the course of the past 7 years, we have never had to go to mediation or arbitration. Adhere to a long-term budgeted approach, as I mentioned to you, given the relative change in the current and projected fund balance. We want to maintain our capital improvements as indicated in our $6.9 million bonding package, and just keep up with all of our energy efficiency upgrades and continue our long-term capital improvement plan commitment. And then what I call is using a critical prioritization analysis to finalize the budget, which is something that we start as an administrative team, is carefully looking at where we are, what the proposals are, what our goals are, and how best to prioritize those using a very critical analysis process, which then continues when the budget is shared with the Board of Education. And that, Bob, is my final superintendent's update of my career.
Thank you.
Anticlimactic. I thought it was going to be more like the movies. I'll save a few more for next.
Very well done, Kath. Very well done. Kath, regarding the budget process and the lowest fund balance, I continue to remind the public, and as recently as the most recent Board of Selectmen meeting, I brought up again the fact that the Board of Education has depleted the fund balance for the purpose of coming in with the zero budget for the towns at the town's request, and that next year will present a challenge, and that they should anticipate having an increase in the school budget going forward. So I once again reiterated that as recently as 2 weeks ago. So just to keep that in mind.
Thank you.
Well, Kath's sitting here thinking, hey, that's not going to be my problem. But it will be for the rest of us. And so I thank you, Bob, for working on this problem now.
It will be a challenge this year. The next item is Director of Finance report. Kim.
I don't know if you're calling on me, but of course, as we speak here, my speakers the battery just went. So I need to change my my speaker. So please bear with me for a minute while I try to figure it out.
While Kim does that, perhaps we should go on to the new business items and come and return to her.
I'll text her to let her know that we could hear her, even if she couldn't hear us. And then we'll just use the chat feature if we have any questions for her. Oh, I guess I could just.
We can move to.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, unfortunately, I cannot hear you, but I can give you the update. So I would like to start with the financials, actually first of the town allocation. So as you know, each year at the end of October, I provide the allocations to each town of what their upcoming budget year will be. So this year, for the 2021 year, Durham did decrease by 84 students and Middlefield decreased by 53 students. We were down a total of 137 students from October 1st of 2019. And so with that, Durham had a increase of a 0.48% in their allocation, and Middlefield realized a decrease of a 0.48%. And that's just simple math. Middlefield's decrease was at 10% of their total enrollment, and Durham's was at 8.2. So Durham had a smaller decrease relative to their enrollment. So Durham's allocation rate is 66.74 as opposed to 66.27, 66.26 last year. And Middlefield's at a 33.26 as opposed to a 33.74 for the 2021 year. Next up is the current financials. I'm going to tackle that and then move on to the financial statements for June 30th of 20. So MTA is at 17% expended and revenues at 23% received. The general fund is at 36% expended and 41% revenue received. When I look at that as compared to last year at this time, November of 19, we're on track. Expenditures were 36 and revenue 44 at this time last year. But I do expect the upcoming months, we're going to see that kind of go off track simply because we have the coronavirus expenditures that are going to be reimbursed by the coronavirus relief funds. However, we're going to be seeing those areas of our expenditures are going to kind of exceed where we were last year. Some of our larger expenditures for this month were fall sports stipends were paid. We paid some tuition bills for VOAG, Magnet, and Outplace, as well as the transportation, and just a robotics competition fee. Unfortunately, I can't hear you. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, but I'll move on to the Bloom Shapiro independent audit report from 1920. They presented at the ERC meeting tonight at 6 p.m. The fiscal year of 1920 ended with a surplus of $838,000 unexpended funds. And you're going to hear me probably quite often say that's due to the unanticipated school closure. Revenue was down. We had an overall negative variance in revenue due to preschool. We didn't charge for, obviously we didn't have preschool. We didn't charge for the students. And also we refunded some parking fees for the high school students. And also we did not rent out our buildings. So we didn't experience all the revenue that we had hoped for. Salaries on the expenditure side, we finished salaries actually very close to budget with just $105,000 surplus. And that I can attribute to spring sports stipends were not paid. Had those been paid, I think that we probably would have come in almost right on target. You may remember that the executive order 7R by the governor instructed us to pay salaries in full for our food service, all our employees. and our transportation contracts. So that those numbers are reflected in this budget. Purchase services had an unexpended balance of $136,000, and that's primarily due because we didn't have a lot of snow removal costs. We were under budget about $41,000 in snow removal. Our SRO had a shortened year. We didn't pay for the times that we were on remote learning, and also we didn't expend all our legal. Operational services saw a surplus, and that's primarily due to the 80% payment of the transportation contract. Again, in reference to the governor's executive order to pay transportation contracts, we were able to negotiate an 80% payment. And then also addition to that, we didn't pay for any field trips or athletic events that didn't occur. So there was savings in that line as well. And then supplies, we did have a surplus in supplies, and that came from a reduction in consumable supplies and a reduced amount for the heating oil and electricity that we used, again, due to unanticipated school closure. So the fund balance ended the year of 1920 at $2.4 million, and that decreased by $509,000. And again, like Dr. Serino said, as well as the auditors, it did decrease, and that was a budgeting strategy due to the desire to use some of those funds to balance the budget. And the balance had been growing, and it was a prudent budgeting strategy. Little did we know that we were going to have this kind of a pandemic. But from that surplus, that $828,000 surplus, we did allocate, you'll remember, for when we were building the budget in April and May, allocated $616,000 of our anticipated surplus towards the 2021 budget that we're in now. It did come in a bit larger. The actual audited surplus did come in a bit larger than I had anticipated. So that's always, that gave us a little bit more money to move forward. But as Dr. Serino said, that, because we did use a significant portion of that surplus already, that leaves us with a fund balance carryover of $384,000 to be used to balance the 21-22 budget. But having said that, if we have a surplus at the end of this year, the 21-22 year, the board can then again decide to allocate some of that surplus to that year, or as we have done in the past, wait it out, put it back, get it audited, and then put it into the next year out. I'll know better when we're building the budget, March, April. I'll be able to provide somewhat of an estimate that which hopefully we'll be comfortable with, knowing what we can build into the budget for our anticipated surplus. In the reports also was a large number of $558,000 that showed as encumbered and committed. That I just wanted to point out is just our accounts payable. So it's just those things that we hadn't received an invoice for by the end of June. It went over into July. It was paid in July, but because it crossed years, it shows as a restricted fund balance. And those were things like some tuition. We had some legal invoices. We had PPE that we had ordered at the end of the year, things that we hadn't paid yet until July. But also in that number, there were some ongoing budgeted items, such as the culvert expenses and the security vestibules. So those are items that were, more so the security vestibules budgeted a couple of years ago, but waiting for the state approval and going out to bid for it and all that. It spans fiscal years. So the auditors show those as committed funds. So that's what's going to be showing in the financial statements. I do want to move on to the loss in the cafeteria fund. It shows at $126,000. Again, due to Executive Order 7R, we had to pay the staff regardless of whether we were selling lunches. So that did take a bite out of it, but I did submit an application to FEMA for a 75% reimbursement. I'm waiting to hear back from FEMA. I did have some feedback. I did have to revise, or I did offer to revise the application to only run through June 30th, because that's when the executive order expired. And they are reviewing yet again, and hopefully I will get a positive report back. During this time, the cafeteria had to run. We had to purchase food because we were offering the free lunches and we had to get the food. So the general fund was and has been transferring funds to the food service to pay the bills, but on a loan basis. And through June 30th, we had transferred $80,000, to pay the payroll and to buy the supplies. Part of that FEMA amount that I mentioned, it's only 75%. And we had talked a few months back about the $36,000 that we didn't anticipate FEMA to reimburse, that I simply didn't feel that the school cafeteria fund would be able to survive. And we talked and we did charge that to the Board of Ed, the general fund, as supplies. So that does reduce the $126,000 loss that you're seeing in the cafeteria fund. But also, if the FEMA reimbursement comes through at $83,000, that combined with the $36,000 will bring the cafeteria deficit down to $6,532. So kind of sticker shock to see the 126, but that as soon as the FEMA reimbursement comes in, we'll pay off the general fund for the loan for the payroll. Non-major governmental funds is primarily MTA. MTA finished the year with an $84,000 surplus, of which $60,000 was used to balance the general fund budget for 2021. So that leaves a net income of $24,000. Revenue was down due to lower than anticipated enrollment, as well as unanticipated closure for those months that we were on remote learning. Expenses were underexpended by $306,000, again, due to unanticipated school closure. We had a surplus in salaries, we didn't have our extended school year, our summer school, and we did not pay for the student workers. They weren't working, so they fall under purchase services students, but we had a savings there of $13,000 because they didn't work, so we didn't pay them. We reduced the amount we paid in transportation to DACO, just like we did for the general fund. And then the supplies, gas and electricity, we had a surplus of $9,000 there because the building was closed. Let's see, so I'm going to move on to the 21-22 budget. The buildings have submitted their budgets and their proposals to my office on December 3rd was the due date. Tiffany has gone through and created a list of the new proposals, and as well as filtering through the budgets, creating what we all know and see when I put the budget spreadsheet up, that we see what the percentage increase is. So that's being worked on now. We do have a meeting with the principals next week to start discussing the different proposals and where the priorities lie. I'm going to move on to Morgan Stanley. I just want to mention briefly that they presented the pension fund performance at the ERC meeting and suggested a few manager fund changes. As Christine said, we're going to reconvene next Wednesday to answer any questions that board members may have, and as well as vote on the motion changes to the new fund managers. I do not have anything further, but please chat me if you have any questions. Again, I apologize. Timing is everything. My earbuds ran out and.
Yeah. First, I'd like to say, unfortunately, Kim can't hear us, but I wanted to reiterate that at the meeting, it was a clean audit, meaning there were no findings, adverse findings in the audit, which was very important, letter to management. There were a couple of recommendations along the lines of IT, which was laptop security, increasing some of the access to that, and some procedural stuff. So based on that, I'd actually make a recommendation, make a motion that the board accept the fiscal year 19-20 audited financial statements from Blum Shapiro.
I'll second that motion.
I'm back. I can hear you, and I apologize. I just had my volume down too low.
Well,
I think we're just supposed to make that motion. Wasn't that on the agenda for like later on?
oh,
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's the next item, so we can move, if there's
Oh.
no more questions.
Let's do it.
for Kim,
I'm sorry.
that's okay. If there's no more questions, we can move to item 12, new business. The first one is possible vote to accept Merwin Fund donation. Merwin Fund is negotiating with Kath and Corey about funding, start funding of a blended learning academy. We haven't got the grant yet, so we don't need to take any action on this. So the item 12B, go ahead, Bob. Christine.
Oh no, he's hiding.
Yeah, motion to accept the fiscal year 1920 Blum Shapiro audited report of the financial statements for Regional School District 13.
I'll second the motion.
Lost contact. Can you hear me now?
No.
Yeah, we
Yep.
can.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Any other comments on this? All right.
Can I jump in, Bob, and just say now that I can hear you, if there's any questions that I missed, please ask them now, and otherwise we can move on. I just want to give you an opportunity.
Nope. I think we're all set, right?
Okay.
The next item is public comment. Ken?
Yep, we have a caller, 0738. You're good to go. *6 to unmute. They're trying to unmute.
Good evening again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Danya? Okay. I would like to say with what I've heard this evening, and especially with the low number coming in for the expected fund balance for the upcoming year, as pertains to putting it forward for the next budget, I guess it's another issue that has to be faced at large, in as much as maybe a little more constraint when the proposal is put forward for the upcoming budget. And with that, I'd like to know if someone can get back to me, if you can't answer me immediately, the eliminated administrative position that was eliminated in order to have the human resources position. Did that cost about the same? And when we're hiring the new superintendent, is he coming on board in line with what's already been established for our outgoing superintendent? I think the people should hear that. And the support staff contract, what were the terms when that was finalized? Did you get that?
Yes, we heard you.
I didn't hear you.
Thank you, Danya. Can you hear me?
Yeah, did you hear what I had to say?
Yeah. You'll get a response from somebody. Kath probably will help you with that.
Okay, thank you.
Later session. All right. Any other comments, Ken?
There are no other callers.
All right, we have
Bob,
Yeah,
could I share one more item for communications? I neglected to mention that, as most of you know, Thomas Edison Middle School will not exist next year because ACES is pulling out and Meriden is taking over the building, which sounds terrible, but I must inform you that ACES is in the process of negotiating the purchase of an empty school, the Chase Collegiate School in Waterbury, and we'll be meeting tomorrow to perhaps make some final decisions. So if you hear about it, I'd rather you hear it here first. We hope it'll be a positive outcome. It's a beautiful facility. It's 42 acres or 44 acres, and it comes fully furnished. So just to put that out there, and next time we meet, at least officially in January, I hope to have some good news, and our students will be able to go to probably won't be Thomas Edison, but it will be a school that has a similar curriculum, and hopefully many of the teachers that might be leaving Thomas Edison to come to whatever the new building is going to be. Thanks.
Thank you. We now have an executive session planned. In order to do that, Ken wants us to go. He has emailed you an invitation to a Google Meet. So you'll have to exit this, go into Google Meet, and when we're done.
Ken said to just stay on this. Please stay in the Zoom and not to jump off. Okay, but Kim and I are going